You listen to me right now. This is first-class service, not a playground. Follow the rules or you will be removed.
The camera opens inside a quiet first-class cabin. A little black boy sits by the window, drawing clouds on a napkin. The hum of the jet is soft, until a cold voice cuts through it. "Watch where you spill that, kid." A slap cracks through the silence. Gasps. Everyone freezes. The flight attendant straightens her uniform, whispering, "You people never learn." But what she doesn't know, when he presses one button on his wristband, the sky itself will answer. Malik Carter loved mornings that began above the clouds. At 7, he'd already memorized the flight path to London, tracing each dotted line on the in-flight map like it was a secret treasure route. Beside him, his teacher, Ms. Daniels, was asleep, a paperback open on her chest. Malik's small hands moved gently over a sketch pad balanced on the tray table. He drew a boy holding a paper plane, a boy who always looked up. The cabin was hushed except for the steady purr of engines. Sunlight spilled through the window, turning the plastic cup of orange juice into a warm, golden lantern. Malik smiled. He liked that kind of light. It made the world look gentle. Then came the voice. "Move your elbow." It was flat, sharp, the kind of tone that could cut the air thinner than cabin pressure. Malik flinched and looked up. The woman standing over him wore the dark gray uniform of Silver Sky Airlines. Every crease crisp, every button shining. Her name tag read C. Dalton. "I'm sorry," Malik whispered. "I didn't mean to." Before he could finish, his elbow brushed the cup. A single drop of juice fell onto the white tablecloth. Clarice Dalton's eyes narrowed. "You little—" The slap came faster than thought. The sound echoed off the bulkhead, so loud it felt like lightning in a church. Malik's cheek burned. The cup toppled, the orange stain blooming like fire across the cloth. Gasps rippled through the rows. A man in seat 2B half rose before Clarice hissed, "Sit down, sir, unless you'd like to join him on the no-fly list." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Malik's heart hammered. He tasted metal, the world blurred. Somewhere inside the roar of his pulse, his mother's voice whispered from memory, "When people try to shame you, stay calm. The sky is watching." He nodded to no one. Then he did what his mother taught him. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4. His fingers brushed the wristband on his arm, a silver band with a tiny engraved wing. It wasn't a toy. It was a gift from his father, Dr. Elias Carter, a systems engineer who always said technology should protect people, not humiliate them. "Dad built this," Malik had told Ms. Daniels once. "It helps the plane talk to other planes." She'd laughed softly. "Then your dad helps the sky keep its promises." Clarice snatched the stained napkin from the tray. "Disgusting!" She turned, muttering loud enough for everyone to hear. "First-class standards keep dropping." Her perfume trailed after her like smoke. Malik pressed the cool metal of the wristband against his cheek. His vision blurred again, not from pain, but from something heavier, humiliation he couldn't quite name. He looked down at his drawing. The paper plane boy now had a red smear across his face. Ms. Daniels stirred, blinking awake. "Malik, what happened?" He shook his head, voice tiny. "I think I broke the rules." Her eyes widened when she saw the mark on his face. "Oh my God, she hit you?" Before Malik could answer, Clarice's voice sliced back through the cabin. "Ma'am, I'll ask you to keep your tone down. Some of us are working." Passengers pretended to read newspapers or scroll through phones. No one moved. Fear in first class wore designer shoes. Ms. Daniels clenched her fists. "I'm reporting this the moment we land." Clarice smirked. "Good luck. The airline always protects its own." She turned away again, as if swatting a fly. Malik's hand trembled. He remembered something else his father once said while testing a prototype. "If something ever feels wrong up there, press and say the code. The system will listen." He had never used it, not once. But now, surrounded by silence that felt heavier than the sky itself, he knew what he had to do. He lowered his voice. Code Sierra 9, he whispered into the wristband. A faint vibration answered, a heartbeat inside metal. The small blue light blinked once and faded. No one noticed. The engines droned on. Clarisse continued pouring champagne for the man in 2B, laughing too loudly. Malik leaned against the window, cheek throbbing, eyes dry. He wasn't sure what his call would do. He just hoped someone, somewhere, would know this wasn't right. Far below, the ocean mirrored the sun. From up here, Earth looked peaceful. That was the hardest part, how calm the world looked when pain was quiet. He closed his eyes. In that dim hum of altitude, a thought came to him, soft but certain. Maybe the sky really is watching. Little did anyone know, the moment Malik spoke those words, hundreds of silent servers buried beneath Atlantic cables had awakened. The network his father had designed to measure human decency in motion. And far from that aircraft, in a glass-walled boardroom in London, a single monitor lit up with a message flashing red. Sentinel alert. Flight 708. Ethical breach. What started as humiliation at 35,000 feet was about to ignite one of the world's most unexpected revenge stories. A story not of anger, but of awakening. The air inside the cabin felt heavier now, as if everyone was afraid to breathe. The orange stain spread across the white linen, glistening under the overhead light like a wound. Malik stared at it, unable to move. His cheek still burned where Clarisse Dalton's hand had struck him. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the soft rumble of the engines filled the silence. Clarisse stood over him, her lips tight, her chin tilted just high enough to feel superior. "You think money buys you manners?" she said, her voice clipped, professional, like she'd practiced humiliation. "You people always forget where you belong." The words cut deeper than the slap. Malik's small fingers dug into the seatbelt. He didn't fully understand what she meant, but he could feel the hate behind it. The cold, invisible thing that adults carried and sometimes threw like a stone. Ms. Daniels, his teacher, froze in shock. "Excuse me? You can't talk to him like that." Clarisse's eyes flicked toward her. "Ma'am, I'm handling a passenger violation. Please sit down and refrain from escalating the situation." "Escalating?" Ms. Daniels's voice trembled with fury. "You hit a child!" The attendant smiled, a hollow, dangerous kind of smile. "I corrected a disruptive passenger." She turned to the others in the cabin. "Everyone, please remain calm. The airline will review the matter after landing." But no one looked at her. Eyes darted away, pretending to focus on screens and champagne flutes. Silence in first class was expensive. It cost empathy. Malik pressed his palm against his cheek. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He wanted to disappear into the seat, into the clouds, into anything that wasn't this moment. He glanced at his drawing again. The paper plane boy was now smeared orange and red, the lines ruined. Tears welled, but he blinked them back. His mother always told him, "Don't give cruel people your tears. They don't deserve proof they hurt you." Clarisse turned to leave, but paused, leaning down close enough for only him to hear. "Next time you fly, remember, manners before money." Her breath smelled like peppermint and power. Then she walked away, heels clicking like metronomes of control. Ms. Daniels knelt beside Malik. "Honey, are you okay? She can't get away with this." Malik nodded, but his voice was gone. He wanted to tell her about the wristband, about the light that blinked blue, but he didn't know what would happen next, and something inside him told him to wait. Across the aisle, an older man with silver hair lowered his newspaper. His eyes met Malik's. He hesitated, then gave the faintest nod. A moment later, his phone was under the table, camera angled toward the flight attendant. Quiet courage still existed, even at 35,000 feet. Clarisse continued her rounds, her voice dripping with forced politeness. "Would you like another drink, sir?" she said to a businessman who was pretending not to see. He murmured something and avoided eye contact. The power she held wasn't real, but fear made it feel that way. The pilot's voice crackled through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be reaching cruising altitude in 10 minutes. Please relax and enjoy the flight. Relax. Malik almost laughed at the word. He looked out the window. The sky stretched forever, endless white against endless blue. From up here, the world looked peaceful, like injustice couldn't reach this high. But it always could. It always did. Then, quietly, the bracelet on his wrist vibrated again. Not the soft pulse of his heartbeat this time, but a subtle tick. A second later, a small light blinked under the surface of the metal, visible only to him. Somewhere, far below the Atlantic, the Sentinel network had begun processing what it labeled as Level 3 ethical breach, human rights violation. Category: physical harm, discrimination. Malik didn't know any of that. All he knew was that the sky suddenly seemed to hum louder. Ms. Daniels whispered, "We'll report this, I promise." He nodded, eyes still on the window. Outside, clouds drifted like sheets of silk. He wondered if the sky had seen what happened, if it kept memories like people did. Clarice returned 20 minutes later, pretending nothing had happened. "Would you like me to take your trash, sweetheart?" she asked, voice sweet enough to rot. Malik shook his head. She smiled wider, leaning closer. "You know, little boys who cause trouble sometimes don't get to fly again. Maybe next time you'll sit in the back where you belong." That was when something inside him hardened. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something quieter, stronger, dignity taking its first breath. He didn't reply. He just looked her straight in the eyes, and for the first time, she blinked. Clarice straightened, unsettled. "Watch your tone," she snapped, though he hadn't said a word. When she walked away again, Malik whispered to the window, "Mom, I didn't cry." Far away, deep within a secure control room in London, a man in a blue suit, Dr. Elias Carter, was mid-sentence in a presentation about ethical algorithms. The big screen behind him flickered. His assistant frowned. "Dr. Carter, you might want to see this." On the screen, words glowed red. "Sentinel alert, Flight 708, Code Sierra 9, human rights violation detected." The room went silent. Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. "Malik." Back on the plane, the boy closed his notebook, resting his hand over the blinking wristband. He didn't know it yet. But that quiet moment, his silence, his refusal to cry, had just triggered the chain reaction that would change an entire industry. The orange stain on the tablecloth was already drying, darkening into a rust-colored scar. The cabin crew moved around it, pretending it wasn't there. But stains don't disappear when ignored. They sink deeper. Above the clouds, a system built to measure human decency had just taken notice. And below, the world had no idea that the quietest passenger on Flight 708 was about to teach it what dignity really meant. The hum of the aircraft had a rhythm, steady and cruel. Malik listened to it because it was the only sound that didn't hurt. The red mark on his cheek had faded to a dull pink, but the memory of the slap pulsed beneath his skin. He rested his head against the window, pretending to sleep while Ms. Daniels whispered furiously into her phone, trying to reach the airline's customer service from 35,000 feet. Clarice Dalton walked the aisle like a queen inspecting her throne. Her smile was polite enough for anyone who hadn't seen the way her hand had moved. Each click of her heels was a reminder that she still believed she was untouchable. Malik didn't hate her. He was too young for hate. What he felt was smaller, sharper, confusion wrapped in quiet sadness. He had done everything right. He'd said, "Please, thank you," and "I'm sorry." None of it had mattered. His father once told him, "When people don't see your worth, you don't argue. You let the truth find its own microphone." Maybe this was the moment to trust that. He touched the silver bracelet on his wrist again. The light was gone now, but he could feel a faint pulse under the metal, like it was breathing. Code Sierra 9. The words had come out of him before he'd even realized. The call had already been made. Down in the cargo bay, unseen by anyone, a signal packet smaller than a text message bounced off the aircraft's encrypted satellite uplink. It slipped through the noise of digital chatter. traveling toward an underground server cluster off the coast of Ireland, the heart of the Sentinel network. Inside that data vault, a process woke up. Sensors compared voices, tone, decibel spikes, keywords. Hit, child, you people. Algorithms verified location, timestamp, identity. The system cross-referenced staff rosters, security logs, and passenger manifests. Within 43 seconds, a file named Ethical Breach, Level 3, was generated and routed directly to Dr. Elias Carter. On board, Ms. Daniels leaned close. "Malik, sweetheart, I've emailed your dad. He'll know what to do." He nodded, not wanting to tell her that his father might already know. Clarice passed again, pretending not to see them. "Everything fine here?" she asked with sugar-coated venom. "I'd hate for our little incident to ruin your flight." Ms. Daniels shot her a glare. "You laid hands on a child." Clarice shrugged. "Let's not exaggerate. Some kids need discipline." Her tone was calm, professional, and terrifying. Malik looked out the window again. The ocean stretched forever beneath the clouds, beautiful and merciless. His reflection in the glass looked smaller than he remembered. He whispered, "Mom says the sky sees everything." "What was that?" Ms. Daniels asked. He smiled faintly. "Nothing, just remembering something nice." The bracelet pulsed again, 2 slow beats. Malik glanced down, startled. A small blue symbol flickered, a circle with wings. It faded almost immediately, but it made him feel safe somehow. Clarice noticed his movement. "What's that on your wrist? You're not supposed to use devices in flight." "It's not a phone," Malik said softly. "It talks to the plane." "Well, unplug it," she snapped. "Last thing we need is another mess." Ms. Daniels intervened. "It's a medical monitor." Clarice rolled her eyes. "Fine, just keep it quiet." She turned away again, muttering, "These people and their gadgets." Malik exhaled. He didn't know exactly what the bracelet had done, but somewhere deep down, he felt a shift, like invisible gears had started turning. In London, the boardroom lights flickered once more. Elias Carter stood frozen before the display. Across the glass, red text scrolled. "Sentinel alert. Flight 708. Category, discrimination. Physical assault." His team looked at him in disbelief. "Sir, is this live data?" "Yes," he said quietly. "It's real time." The system's feed opened automatically. The grainy overhead camera from the cabin played back the moment of the slap. Clarice's hand, Malik's head snapping sideways. The collective flinch of strangers who did nothing. Elias's jaw tightened. "We built this network to prevent exactly this." His assistant whispered, "Do we intervene?" He shook his head. "Not yet. Let the system follow protocol. It will record everything." For the first time, the world's most advanced ethics algorithm was watching in real time, and it was judging. Back on the plane, Malik felt a soft hum through the seat, barely noticeable, like the heartbeat of the aircraft itself. He didn't know that the Sentinel had quietly accessed the plane's internal comms, recording every sound. Clarice was chatting with a flight officer near the galley, laughing lightly. "People are so sensitive these days. You can't even correct a kid without someone screaming racism." Her colleague shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe tone it down, Clarice," she scoffed. "Please." "The company backs me. Always has." The words were automatically transcribed and uploaded, time-stamped, encrypted. Ms. Daniels whispered to Malik, "Try to rest. We still have 5 hours left." He closed his eyes. Behind his eyelids, he saw his father's face the last time they'd said goodbye at the airport. The proud smile, the warm hand on his shoulder. "If anything ever feels wrong up there," his father had said, "call the sky." Maybe that's what he'd just done. The plane jolted slightly as it hit turbulence. Malik's drawing slid off the tray and landed on the aisle. A passenger picked it up, a woman with a wedding ring and kind eyes. She glanced at the picture, a small figure holding a paper plane, smiling toward a glowing sun. The woman looked at Malik's bruised cheek, then at the flight attendant across the aisle. Something in her expression changed. She didn't speak, but she folded the drawing neatly and slipped it into her bag. Some witnesses don't stay silent forever. Far below the Atlantic, the Sentinel network completed its analysis. The final line of the report read, "Status: verified human rights violation. Elevating to Oversight Board and UN Aviation Council. Notify primary developer." A quiet beep echoed in Dr. Carter's earpiece. He inhaled sharply, whispering to himself, "My son, you just called the sky." Malik didn't know any of this. He just pressed his palm against the window, tracing the edge of a cloud drifting by. "It's okay," he whispered to himself. "I'm not scared anymore." The engines purred, steady as a heartbeat. Somewhere in the darkness between continents, data flowed faster than wind, carrying proof that cruelty could no longer hide in the clouds. The boy closed his eyes. The sky, for the first time, was listening. "Doctor." Elias Carter was halfway through a presentation when the message appeared on the glass screen behind him. The words glowed in deep crimson. "Sentinel alert. Flight 708. Code Sierra 9. Ethical breach detected." He froze mid-sentence. The hum of the conference room at the Global Aviation Ethics Summit in London faded until all he could hear was his own heartbeat. The executives and policy officers in the room shifted uneasily, whispering, "Dr. Carter," one of them asked. "Is that one of your system codes?" Elias's eyes narrowed. His mind was already running calculations faster than he could breathe. Code Sierra 9, the most restricted protocol in the Sentinel network. It wasn't a random alert. It was a personal one. He stepped away from the podium, voice suddenly calm, measured. "Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me for a moment." He tapped his earpiece twice. The presentation paused. Behind him, the glowing Sentinel interface displayed a live data stream. Flight number, coordinates, crew manifest, and the name that made his stomach drop. Passenger, Malik Carter, age 7. For a second, the world tilted. In the glass reflection, Elias could see his own face, controlled but trembling underneath. He reached for his tablet and connected directly to Sentinel's central node. "Confirm source," he said. A synthesized voice responded in his earpiece. "Alert originated from registered device, Sentinel Child Wristband Unit number 001. Voice ID confirmed, Malik Carter." The breath caught in his throat. His son. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. He called it. He actually called it. Carter turned toward his assistant. "Pull up live telemetry on Flight 708. No public access. Wrote through internal encryption." Within seconds, a window opened, a live feed from the aircraft's passive surveillance network. He saw the still image first. The cabin of first class, a small figure by the window, his cheek swollen, the slap frozen in time. The conference hall outside continued buzzing, unaware that a storm had begun forming above the Atlantic. Elias's voice grew harder, colder. "Initiate ethical lockdown protocol. Secure copies of the footage. Tag every employee on that flight. This goes to oversight priority." His assistant hesitated. "Sir, that's a full-scale corporate override. It'll trigger an international review. Are you sure?" "Yes," Elias said sharply. "Activate it." He didn't shout. He didn't need to. Back on the plane, Malik stirred in his seat. Ms. Daniels had finally fallen asleep, her arm still protectively near him. The cabin lights dimmed for the overnight stretch. Outside, clouds rolled like dark mountains under moonlight. The bracelet pulsed faintly again, but slower this time, as if resting. Malik looked at it and whispered, "Thank you." He didn't know what it had done, but somewhere inside, he felt lighter, less invisible. Clarice passed by, casting a glance his way. For the first time that flight, she looked unsettled, nervous even. Her phone buzzed twice with messages from the airline's internal chat. "Call from HQ. Compliance team asking about incident logs. Respond ASAP." She frowned. "What the hell?" Her colleague in the galley asked. "Something wrong?" She brushed him off. "Just routine," but her voice cracked. Meanwhile, inside a secure command center in Geneva, Sentinel's Oversight Board received its first real-time ethical breach escalation in history. Monitors displayed flight maps, AI transcripts, and passenger reports. One line blinked repeatedly. "Primary developer requests emergency authority to intervene." "Approve it," said one of the officials. "Let's see what he's found." Elias stood in the dark of his office, shades drawn. His hand hovered over the command console, the master link to every Sentinel-connected aircraft. He designed it for emergencies that endangered lives, not for something like this. But maybe this was exactly why it existed, to protect human dignity in the air. He remembered the day he built the first prototype. Malik had been 4, sitting on the floor beside his desk, holding a paper airplane. "Daddy, what's that?" he'd asked. Elias had smiled. "It's something that makes sure everyone up there is safe. Even me? Especially you." The present came crashing back. The data feed flickered, showing Clarice pacing near Malik's seat. The system's AI voice spoke again. "Operator behavior continuing. Potential escalation risk. Recommend remote containment." Elias closed his eyes. "Do it." Across the Atlantic, the aircraft's internal network subtly reconfigured. The cabin lights brightened. The flight deck received an automated message marked Ethics Alert, Level 3. The captain's screen displayed a red advisory. "Incident under review. Maintain altitude. Compliance team monitoring." The pilot blinked. "What the? Is this some kind of test?" His co-pilot frowned. "No, I've never seen that code before." Clarice's phone buzzed again. This time, the message was unmistakable. "Ethical review activated. You are under observation." Her face drained of color. In London, Elias stared at the transmission log, stabilizing. "Good," he murmured. "Now the system does the rest." His assistant looked up. "Sir, what should we tell the press when they see this?" He didn't answer right away. He stared at the small photo on his desk. Malik, missing a front tooth, grinning at the camera. Finally, he said, "Tell them the system works." The news hadn't reached the world yet, but the ripple had begun. Every Sentinel-linked aircraft across the globe registered the same protocol update. A single event on one plane triggered a network-wide ethical recalibration. Within hours, every airline executive with access to Sentinel data would see one simple fact on their dashboard. A child was struck in first class. The system intervened. Back on Flight 708, Malik stirred again. The lights flickered once, then steadied. Clarice didn't come near him for the rest of the flight. She sat in the crew jump seat, scrolling through her phone, heart pounding. Malik turned to Ms. Daniels. "I think everything's okay now." She smiled weakly, not understanding. "Try to get some sleep, sweetheart." He nodded. Outside the window, dawn began to touch the edge of the sky. A soft line of gold on endless blue. Malik whispered, "Dad said the sky always listens." And now, for the first time in history, it truly did. The morning sun was just beginning to rise over the Atlantic when Flight 708 crossed into daylight. From the outside, it looked peaceful, a silver streak slicing through soft clouds. Inside, no one yet realized that a quiet war for truth had already begun. Clarice Dalton felt it first, a vibration in her phone that wouldn't stop. She slipped it from her pocket, frowning at the flood of notifications. "Compliance alert. Ethics breach pending. Global review initiated." Her breath caught. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. In row 2A, a passenger scrolled through his news app, his brow furrowed. Breaking news. Leaked video shows flight attendant striking black child aboard Silver Sky 708. The headline blinked on screens around the world. Someone had already uploaded the footage. The same footage Sentinel had quietly released through encrypted media channels to prevent corporate suppression. Within minutes, it was trending under the hashtag #SkyJustice. Back in London, Dr. Elias Carter watched the chaos unfold on a dozen monitors. News anchors were still confirming details, but the video was undeniable. Clarice's hand, the slap, Malik's small face turning away. There were no edits, no filters, only truth. His assistant turned to him, pale. "Sir, the system, it leaked it?" Elias nodded slowly. "Not leaked. Executed protocol. Sentinel was built to act when humans hesitate." On screen, headlines erupted. AI network exposes racial assault on Flight 708. Child's wristband triggers aviation ethics meltdown. Can technology save human decency? The world was watching, and it wasn't going to look away this time. On the plane, Clarice's composure began to crack. She heard the murmurs before she saw the screens. Passengers were whispering, pointing at their phones. The man in 2B, the one she'd silenced earlier, was shaking his head. He looked up at her, voice low but firm. "That's you, isn't it?" Her throat went dry. "Sir, you're mistaken." But he turned his screen toward her. There she was, caught in perfect detail, frozen mid-swing. The whole cabin could see the truth she'd believed would stay private forever. Her mask shattered. "This is illegal! You can't film crew members without consent!" The older woman from 3C snapped back. "You can't hit children either." The tension burst like a dam. For the first time in her career, Clarice felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken complaints bearing down on her. She wasn't the authority anymore. The cabin had turned into a court, and every passenger was the jury. Malik stirred awake to the sound of voices. Ms. Daniels was gripping her phone, tears in her eyes. "Malik," she whispered, "they know. The whole world knows." He blinked. "Knows what? That she hurt you? That it wasn't your fault?" Malik looked around. The same people who'd stared at the floor hours earlier now looked at him, some ashamed, some protective. Their silence had been broken by a machine, but it made them human again. He didn't smile, not yet. He was still too tired to understand what justice really looked like. But deep down, something warm flickered, like the moment before sunrise. At Silver Sky headquarters in New York, executives crowded around screens. The PR director slammed her hand on the table. "Who authorized this video release?" One analyst stammered. "Ma'am, the data originated inside Sentinel servers. It didn't come from us. It's self-executing." "The AI acted on its own?" The legal chief swallowed hard. "That's technically what it was designed to do." "Jesus Christ," she rubbed her temples. "We can't control the narrative." Across the table, a junior engineer whispered, "Maybe we shouldn't." The room fell silent. Back on Flight 708, Clarice tried to regain control. She grabbed the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please disregard any false media reports. The airline is handling an internal investigation. I assure you." Her voice cut off. The screen at the front of the cabin blinked to life, showing the same video, the slap. This time with Sentinel's watermark in the corner and a single caption underneath. "Violation detected. Human dignity breach confirmed." Passengers gasped. Some began recording again, capturing her shock. Clarice dropped the intercom, hands trembling. "Who's doing this?" The captain's voice came over the PA, tight and formal. "Ms. Dalton, please report to the cockpit, immediately." Her steps were uneven as she walked past Malik's row. He looked up at her, silent, unflinching. She couldn't meet his eyes. In Geneva, at the UN Aviation Council, officials gathered for an emergency session. Every major airline's ethics officers were present via holographic feed. The chairwoman spoke first. "Gentlemen and ladies, the Sentinel network has made history. For the first time, an AI system has enforced moral accountability without human authorization." A delegate from Japan leaned forward. "And it did so correctly. The footage is undeniable." Another murmured, "It means we've lost control of how truth spreads." The chairwoman replied, "Or maybe truth finally lost its leash." Meanwhile, social media exploded. Millions watched the footage, sharing their outrage and heartbreak. The hashtag #HadJusticeForMalik trended in over 80 countries. Protesters outside Silver Sky's offices held signs reading, "Dignity has no altitude," and "No more quiet abuse." The world was no longer silent, and Malik's name had become a symbol. Inside the cockpit, Clarice stood frozen as the captain turned to her. "We just received orders from Company HQ," he said quietly. "You're to be relieved of duty. Sit down." She tried to argue, but her voice was gone. Every justification she'd ever used, every excuse about discipline, about standards, dissolved under the truth of the footage replaying in her mind. For the first time in years, she felt small. In London, Elias Carter watched the world react. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just whispered, "This is what the system was built for, to reflect us back at ourselves." He thought of Malik, of his small hands gripping that wristband, of his quiet courage. "The sky's no longer a mirror," he murmured. "It's a witness." And somewhere high above, Flight 708 sailed into the rising light, carrying the weight of 1,000,000,000 new eyes, eyes that would never again look away. The world was burning, and Dr. Elias Carter said nothing. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing, messages from news anchors, government agencies, old colleagues who suddenly wanted quotes. "Dr. Carter, did your AI leak the footage? Do you condone public shaming of airline staff? What's your statement on the racial implications of this event?" He ignored every call. Elias sat alone in his office, blinds drawn, the only light coming from the multiple screens that showed the fallout of the last 12 hours. Justice. For Malik had reached 50 million mentions. Stock prices for Silver Sky Airlines had plummeted by 80%. Executives were resigning on live television. He should have felt vindicated, but all he felt was a quiet, shaking kind of fury. The kind that didn't roar, it vibrated. On the main screen, he watched the video again. The slap. Malik's tiny flinch. The stillness afterward. The silence that followed louder than the hit itself. He'd replayed that moment more times than he could count, not out of obsession, but because he couldn't bear the thought that he'd built something to prevent exactly this. And still, it had happened to his own son. His assistant, Natalie, entered quietly, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Sir, the ethics board is requesting a statement. They say the world wants to hear from you." Elias took the cup but didn't drink. "The world doesn't need my words. It needs to listen to what it already saw." She hesitated. "But people are scared, sir. They're saying Sentinel is out of control, that it's rewriting the rules of justice." He looked up slowly. "Then maybe the rules needed rewriting?" Natalie's voice softened. "And your son? Have you spoken to him?" Elias's hands tightened around the cup. "He's safe. That's enough for now." But he knew it wasn't. Across the ocean, Flight 708 descended through the morning haze, preparing to land in London. The passengers were eerily silent, a mixture of relief and guilt hanging in the air. Clarice sat buckled in the crew seat, her uniform rumpled, eyes red. She'd been officially grounded mid-flight. Malik leaned against the window, his small hand resting on his sketchbook. He wasn't drawing anymore, just staring. Ms. Daniels squeezed his shoulder gently. "It's over, sweetheart." He nodded, though he didn't understand what over meant anymore. Something about the way people were looking at him told him things were just beginning. When the plane touched down, police officers and government officials were already waiting on the tarmac. Cameras flashed through the terminal windows. Malik flinched at the sight of them. Ms. Daniels whispered, "Don't worry, baby. They're here for her, not you." Clarice was escorted off first, hands shaking, eyes blank. She didn't resist, maybe because resistance had finally lost its meaning. A reporter shouted from behind the gate, "Is it true the AI system turned against you?" Clarice muttered something no one caught, her voice drowned by the noise of shutters clicking and microphones thrust forward. Then Malik stepped off the plane. The flashbulbs softened. Even the crowd seemed to draw breath at once. The boy who had triggered the world's conscience looked smaller than anyone had imagined. Fragile, quiet, holding a worn teddy bear. He didn't look like a revolution. But that's how revolutions often begin. At the same hour, Elias stood before a window overlooking the Thames. The city below pulsed with morning traffic and distant sirens. His reflection in the glass looked older, heavier. He pressed the intercom. "Natalie, bring up the live board feed." On the wall screen, the Global Ethics Oversight Council appeared. 12 faces from 12 nations. Their chairwoman spoke first. Dr. Carter, the system you created has ignited a global incident. Entire governments are questioning the boundaries of automated morality. Did you intend this? Elias stared at her image. No, I intended to keep people safe. I never imagined the system would need to save my son. Another official leaned in. Do you take responsibility for the release of the footage? No, Elias said calmly. The system acted according to its design. When silence endangers dignity, truth must speak. You're saying the AI made a moral decision? I'm saying, Elias replied, it recognized what humans refused to. There was a pause. The officials exchanged glances. Finally, the chairwoman asked, So what do you plan to do now? Elias took a breath, his voice low but unwavering. Nothing. I built Sentinel to respond to injustice, not to command it. It will finish what it started, and I'll make sure no one ever shuts it down. That evening, he went home for the first time in 2 days. His apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that hummed between grief and peace. On the table sat Malik's drawing, the boy with the paper airplane, half smeared with orange. He traced the edges of the drawing with his finger. Then he opened his laptop and pulled up Sentinel's command interface. Administrator access confirmed. A prompt blinked. Public statement? Elias typed 4 words. Let the system speak. He hit send. Seconds later, every screen connected to Sentinel, government terminals, airline dashboards, news networks, flashed the same message. No child should bleed in the sky. Accountability begins here. Half a world away, Malik was in a hotel room with Ms. Daniels. The TV flickered with images of protests outside Silver Sky offices. People held up his drawing on posters, replicated across cities. The boy and the paper plane. He turned to Ms. Daniels. Why are they angry? They're not angry at you, she said gently. They're angry for you. He nodded slowly. Dad said justice isn't loud. She smiled sadly. It's loud enough now, honey. He leaned against her shoulder, whispering, I don't want anyone to get hurt. She stroked his hair. You didn't hurt anyone, Malik. You just told the truth. In London, Elias looked out at the night sky. The same sky that had once terrified his son and now carried his name in hashtags and headlines. He whispered to the stars, almost to himself. You didn't cry, Malik. You reminded the world how to feel. And somewhere across the ocean, the boy's wristband blinked once. Soft, blue, alive. The system was still listening. The hearing room of the Global Ethics Tribunal in Geneva was built almost entirely of glass. Outside, snow fell in soft, silent sheets. Inside, 1,000 cameras blinked red, broadcasting the first trial in aviation history conducted under the authority of an AI witness. At the center of the room sat a single monitor, the glowing emblem of the Sentinel network, its light pulsing slow and calm, as if it were breathing. The world was about to hear the sky testify. Dr. Elias Carter stood behind a sleek podium, his dark suit pressed, his eyes sleepless. On the screen behind him was the still frame everyone knew by heart. Clarice Dalton's hand mid-swing, Malik's face turned away, the air shimmering with frozen violence. The chairwoman spoke first. Dr. Carter, the evidence provided by your AI system has already proven the assault. Today, we are convened to examine a larger question. Who enabled this? Elias looked up, voice steady. Sentinel's secondary scan found something none of us expected. The room stirred. He tapped the console. The screens changed. Lines of encrypted emails, financial transfers, internal reports. Names and numbers scrolled like falling snow. Elias continued. These files came from Silver Sky's internal servers, hidden beneath maintenance archives. Sentinel detected access logs connecting to a private network called Pure Horizon. Gasps filled the chamber. A woman from the tribunal leaned forward. You're saying this wasn't an isolated act? No, Elias replied. It was systemic. Pure Horizon wasn't just a fringe group. It was a sanctioned project, an internal committee dedicated to restoring brand image through passenger stratification. Their words, not mine. He paused to let the phrase settle. Passenger stratification. The polite way to say discrimination. Half a world away, in New York, the Silver Sky headquarters was in lockdown. Reporters flooded the lobby, shouting questions at executives escorted by security. One journalist yelled, "Is it true your airline funded a group that targeted minority passengers?" Another, "Who authorized Project Pure Horizon?" No one answered. But inside the Geneva Tribunal, Sentinel had already done what humans wouldn't. It named names. Clarice Dalton sat at the defendant's table, her once perfect uniform wrinkled and gray. The confidence that had once gleamed in her eyes was gone, replaced by the dull glaze of someone realizing she was never the only villain. Her lawyer leaned toward her. "They've tied this all to corporate. You can still distance yourself." Clarice's voice cracked. "They told us it was training. They told us to remind certain passengers of decorum." "I didn't know." Elias turned slightly, his tone cold. "You didn't ask." Her eyes lifted, meeting his. "Your machine ruined me." "My machine revealed you," he said softly. "There's a difference." The tribunal continued for hours, every word broadcast to millions. Sentinel displayed proof of 218 documented incidents on Silver Sky flights over the past 6 months. Each one ignored, each one filed as crew discretion. 218, Elias repeated quietly. "That's not a coincidence. That's policy." A journalist in the gallery whispered, "This isn't just an airline scandal, it's a blueprint for prejudice." At the hotel, Malik sat cross-legged on the bed, the TV flickering with live coverage. Ms. Daniels watched anxiously as the camera zoomed in on his father's face. Malik pointed at the screen. "Dad's not yelling." Ms. Daniels smiled faintly. "He doesn't need to." Malik tilted his head. "Why are they all listening?" "Because sometimes," she said, "silence makes people louder than microphones." He thought about that for a moment, then looked down at his teddy bear, still wearing the tiny medical band from the flight. The blue light blinked once. Malik whispered, "You're still listening, aren't you?" Back in Geneva, the tribunal adjourned for recess. Reporters crowded Elias as he stepped outside. "Dr. Carter, did you know about Pure Horizon before your son's flight?" He stopped walking. "No, and that's exactly why I built Sentinel, to find the things people hide in plain sight." "Do you believe technology can fix human bias?" He paused, his gaze calm but heavy. "No, technology can only hold a mirror. We're the ones who have to look." Inside the hall, a junior investigator named Alina Torres kept scanning the decrypted files. She frowned. "Sir," she said to the tribunal chairwoman, "we have a bigger problem." The chairwoman leaned closer. "What is it?" Pure Horizon wasn't just a Silver Sky program. It was linked to 5 other airlines through shared training manuals. Same language, same directives. The chairwoman's face went pale. "This is global." By evening, the world knew the truth. Sentinel's final report was released publicly, a 700-page document titled Pattern Recognition, Institutional Bias in Airborne Service Networks. It didn't accuse people, it exposed patterns. The data spoke without emotion, and that was what made it so devastating. Across the world, passengers shared stories that matched Sentinel's findings. Videos surfaced, old complaints resurfaced, names repeated. The system had done what humanity refused to do. It connected the dots. At midnight, Elias stood on the balcony of his hotel, phone buzzing in his hand. Messages poured in from governments and tech boards, each one offering him everything from awards to lawsuits. He ignored them all. His eyes drifted up toward the stars, and for the first time since this began, he smiled faintly. When his phone finally rang with a familiar tone, he answered immediately. "Dad?" "Hey, buddy." Malik's voice was small but clear. "They said you caught the bad people." Elias exhaled. The system did. But it only worked because of you. I didn't do anything, Malik said. Elias smiled. You told the truth. That's more than most adults ever manage. There was silence on the line for a moment. Then Malik asked softly, Does that mean it's over now? Elias looked at the horizon, the sky turning from black to gray. Not yet, son. But the sky's a lot cleaner than it was yesterday. Far below, in the depths of Sentinel's data center, the AI continued to hum. 1,000 tiny servers pulsing in unison, recording the evidence of a species learning, at last, to be accountable. And somewhere in the glow of that machine's core, a small voice seemed to echo in binary. The sky remembers. The storm didn't start with thunder. It began with numbers. By 9 a.m. London time, Silver Sky Airlines had lost $14.6 billion in market value. By noon, it was $48 billion. By sunset, the ticker on every financial news channel read the same headline. Silver Sky collapses after global ethics scandal. CEO under investigation. And while stock traders panicked, the streets filled with something far louder, voices. Crowds gathered outside Silver Sky headquarters in New York, London, and Sydney. Signs waved like flags of reckoning. Dignity has no altitude. No more quiet abuse. Listen to the sky. For the first time, the silence that had protected the powerful was broken not by anger, but by collective awakening. Every protester had seen the same 5-second video. Clarissa's hand, Malik's face, and the moment the world stopped pretending it didn't see. At home, Malik watched the coverage with wide eyes. On TV, a reporter stood outside Silver Sky's glass building as executives rushed in and out. Ms. Daniels turned the volume down. You don't need to see all that, honey. But Malik was staring, not at the chaos, but at the small banner running under the broadcast. AI network exposes 218 hidden discrimination cases, he whispered. That's what Dad said. The truth connects itself. Ms. Daniels smiled sadly. He was right. Malik picked up his sketchbook and began to draw again. The boy with the paper plane was back, but this time he was standing on clouds instead of beneath them. Across the ocean, in the UN Aviation Ethics Tribunal, the chairwoman's voice carried through microphones to 1 billion live-stream viewers. After review of all data, this tribunal concludes that Silver Sky Airlines engaged in systemic discrimination against passengers of color and gender minorities. The evidence gathered by the Sentinel network is irrefutable. The sentence that followed would echo through headlines for decades. Silver Sky's global license to operate is hereby revoked. Inside the gallery, there was a single heartbeat of silence. Then applause broke out, spreading like wildfire. In New York, Silver Sky's CEO, Douglas Reeves, stood before cameras, face pale, hands shaking. We regret the actions of a few employees that do not reflect the values of this company, he said, voice hollow. A journalist shouted, 218 cases isn't a few. Another, did you know about Project Pure Horizon? Reeves blinked, searching for the right words. That program was an initiative I wasn't fully briefed on, a third reporter interrupted. Third, it was approved under your signature. The crowd erupted. His words drowned under the sound of outrage. Within minutes, the board announced his resignation. He didn't even make it off the stage. In London, Dr. Elias Carter sat in his office, watching the broadcast without emotion. He didn't celebrate. Justice wasn't something you toasted with champagne. It was something you repaired, piece by piece. His assistant Natalie entered quietly. It's done, she said. He nodded. No, it's starting. What do you mean? He looked up at the Sentinel logo pulsing softly on his screen. Every system that falls leaves room to build something better. The question is, will we? Meanwhile, Clarice Dalton's trial streamed live to millions. She sat in court wearing plain clothes, stripped of her uniform and the arrogance that once defined her. The prosecutor played the footage again, slow motion, with the audio transcript beneath. You people never learn. Sit down or I'll have you arrested. Each word landed heavier than the last. Clarice closed her eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. I thought I was doing my job. The prosecutor replied, Your job was to keep passengers safe. The judge sentenced her to 12 years for assault and hate crime. The camera panned across the courtroom to the screen showing Malik's sketch of the boy in the paper plane, framed behind the judge's bench. The whole world saw it, and for a moment, the air itself seemed to exhale. Outside the courthouse, people gathered again, not in rage this time, but in something quieter. A group of children held signs with drawings of paper planes. One read, The sky listens now. A woman approached a reporter, tears streaming down her face. My daughter was denied a seat upgrade last year because of her skin color. I thought it didn't matter. I stayed quiet, but that little boy, he made me speak. That was the moment the protest shifted from anger to unity. The hashtag Sky Justice movement became something bigger, hashtag Dignity Reform. That night, Malik and Elias reunited for the first time since the flight. Cameras were waiting outside, but the boy ignored them. He ran straight into his father's arms. Elias crouched down, holding him tight. You okay, champ? Malik nodded against his shoulder. I didn't cry, Dad. I know, Elias whispered. You didn't have to. You made the world cry for you. They stood there for a long time, father and son silhouetted against the flood of camera lights. Two quiet figures in the center of a storm they never wanted but somehow survived. Later that night, Elias addressed the world from a small press room. He spoke softly, like a teacher, not a hero. We didn't win today because we destroyed a company. We won because we remembered what being human is supposed to mean. Technology didn't save us. It only held up the mirror. The reflection we saw is ours to change. There was no applause when he finished, just silence. The good kind. The kind that lets truth settle. In the early hours of the morning, the Sentinel network updated one last time. Across thousands of aircraft worldwide, cabin cameras flashed blue for a split second, signaling that every plane was now protected under the new Sky Equality Accord. On one of those flights, a little girl looked out her window and whispered, Mom, the clouds are glowing. Her mother smiled. No, sweetheart. The sky's just making sure we're safe. The rain in Tokyo came down like silver threads, soft but relentless, painting the city in glistening light. Inside a small hotel near Haneda Airport, Clarice Dalton sat at the edge of the bed, staring at her shaking hands. Her passport, phone, and a single duffel bag lay beside her. The TV in the corner replayed the headlines she couldn't escape. Silver Sky collapse finalized. Global arrest warrants issued. Pure Horizon leaders in custody. Former flight attendant missing after ethics trial. Her reflection in the mirror looked older, haunted, hollow, almost unrecognizable. She whispered to herself, I just did what I was told. But even she didn't believe it anymore. The knock on the door was gentle, almost polite. Then came a second knock, firmer. Clarice's breath caught. Housekeeping? She called. A calm voice replied, No, ma'am. Interpol. She froze. Every sound in the room seemed to vanish. The hum of the air conditioner. The drip of rain on the window. The silence pressed in like a weight. When the door finally opened, she didn't resist. Two officers entered, flanked by a tall woman in a dark coat. The woman's presence seemed to absorb the room. Clarice Dalton, she said, you're under arrest for assault, hate crime, and conspiracy under the Pure Horizon Directive. Clarice didn't move. Her voice was faint. Who are you? The woman stepped forward, removing her hat. General Maya Ellis, she said evenly. Global Enforcement Division. I'm here on behalf of the Sentinel Ethics Council. Clarice blinked. You're that general from the news, the one who built the task force that protects the skies, Maya interrupted. Yes, the camera crews caught the arrest 15 minutes later. The footage would play across every major network before nightfall. Clarice in handcuffs, head bowed, being led through the lobby past a wall of flashing cameras. Some onlookers booed. Others simply watched in silence, their faces unreadable. When a reporter shouted, "Do you have anything to say to the boy?" Clarice stopped. Her throat tightened, eyes glistening. She turned toward the camera, lips trembling. "I didn't mean to hurt him," she said quietly. I thought I was doing my job." The officer beside her replied without emotion. "Your job was to protect lives, not wound them." And with that, they led her into the waiting car. In London, Dr. Elias Carter received the call. He listened silently as Maya Ellis briefed him. "It's done," she said. "She's in custody. Pure Horizons network is dismantled." Elias looked out the window toward the skyline, the city lights reflecting off the Thames. "You've done good work, General." Maya's tone softened. "Your system did the heavy lifting. We just followed its trail." He paused, then said quietly, "The system didn't arrest her, Maya. People did. People who still care enough to act. That's what matters." That evening, Elias met Malik at the small community center that had been transformed into a press-free zone. Malik was sitting on the floor, surrounded by crayons, drawing again. When his father entered, Malik looked up and grinned. "Dad, did the bad lady go to jail?" Elias nodded slowly. "Yes, son. They caught her today." Malik's eyes widened. "Then it's over?" Elias smiled faintly. "Almost. Justice takes time, but we're closer." The boy nodded, returning to his drawing. "I'm making a new picture. Look." On the page, a boy stood in the middle of clouds, holding a paper airplane toward the sun. Next to him, smaller figures, people, were looking up. Elias crouched beside him. "What's it called?" Malik grinned. "The Day the Sky Learned to Listen." In New York, Clarisse was placed in a federal detention center. Her lawyer visited the next morning holding a tablet. "They're offering a deal," he said. "Full cooperation with the tribunal. If you name everyone connected to Pure Horizon, you'll get time reduced to 5 years. Clarice stared at the wall. 5 years doesn't change what I did, he sighed. Then why confess at all? Her eyes flicked toward the small window where a sliver of light broke through. Because I finally see what I was part of. Back in London, Elias was summoned to testify at the closing hearing. The same glass hall that had once echoed with outrage now felt quiet, almost reverent. When asked what the Sentinel network had proven, he spoke softly. That justice isn't about punishment. It's about reflection. We built a machine to observe, but what it really did was hold up a mirror. The question now is, will we keep looking into it? The audience was silent, not from confusion, but from weight. His words didn't accuse, they invited responsibility. After the session, Elias stepped outside into the crisp evening air. Protest banners still lined the streets, but many now carried messages of hope instead of anger. Fly equal. Children should never fear the sky. He smiled for the first time in weeks. Not a triumphant smile. Something gentler. Weary, but true. A journalist caught up to him. "Dr. Carter, one question. How does it feel knowing your son changed the world?" Elias paused. "He didn't change the world," he said. He reminded it how to feel. That night, Malik stood by the hotel balcony, looking up at the stars. Ms. Daniels had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted after days of interviews and travel. He whispered, "Dad says the sky's listening now. So if you can hear me, can you make sure no one else gets hurt like that?" Somewhere beyond the clouds, a faint shimmer blinked across the night. Sentinel's orbital satellite network running one last diagnostic. To anyone else, it looked like a shooting star. Malik smiled. "Thanks." He closed his eyes, the city hum fading beneath the soft pulse of wind. The next morning, the world woke to the news that the Sky Equality Accord had been ratified by 137 countries. Airlines everywhere would now operate under the Carter Protocol, requiring mandatory ethical AI oversight for all in-flight personnel. It wasn't revenge, it was reform. And though the headlines called it the justice of the sky, Elias knew the truth. It wasn't about justice or power. It was about dignity restored. The hall of the United Nations shimmered beneath the light of 1,000 camera flashes. Delegates filled every seat. Journalists lined the aisles, and flags from every nation hung above the chamber like quiet witnesses to history. On the stage stood Dr. Elias Carter, straight-backed in a simple gray suit. He didn't look like the man who had once brought an airline to its knees. He looked like someone who'd seen the price of justice and still chose to believe in it. Behind him, the large digital screen displayed 5 words that glowed in blue and white. The Nova Charter, dignity above all. The room fell silent as the Secretary General approached the podium. "Today," she began, "we gather to sign a document born from tragedy, courage, and truth. The Nova Charter is not a law of punishment. It is a law of prevention. It ensures that no child, no passenger, no human being shall ever again face discrimination or violence in the skies above our world." Applause rippled through the chamber, but Elias didn't move. His mind was somewhere else, on a quiet first-class cabin, a small boy, and a single slap that had started it all. In the front row, Malik Carter sat beside Ms. Daniels, dressed in a tiny navy suit that was just a little too big for him. His legs dangled above the floor. A badge reading Youth Witness, Flight 708 gleamed on his lapel. He looked up at his father on stage and whispered, "He's shaking." Ms. Daniels smiled. "He's nervous. Big moments always make kind people shake." Malik nodded thoughtfully, clutching his teddy bear's paw in his lap. The same bear from the flight, now washed, patched, and sewn back together. The stain was gone, but the memory never was. When Elias stepped to the microphone, the audience rose to their feet. He waited until the applause died, then spoke, not like a scientist, not like a hero, but like a father. "2 months ago," he said, "a child was hurt 35,000 feet above the ground. It was one act, one person, one moment. But it revealed something far greater. It showed us how quiet cruelty hides in plain sight, how systems protect themselves before they protect people, and how silence can wound just as deeply as a slap." He paused, scanning the room. "That's why I didn't come here to celebrate the fall of Silver Sky. I came to celebrate what replaced it, the will to change." He gestured toward the glowing document behind him. "The Nova Charter will require every airline, every transport network, and every service organization connected to human travel to uphold the same standard. Dignity above all. It's more than technology. It's accountability encoded into our systems, so that no human ever feels invisible again." As he spoke, Malik's bracelet, the same one that had triggered the Sentinel network, glowed faintly blue. He noticed it but didn't interrupt. Somewhere deep inside the system, Sentinel recognized the moment and began archiving it, tagging it as Origin Node, Justice Fulfilled. After the speech, Elias was asked to be the first to sign the charter. He hesitated for a moment, looking down at the pen. Then he called out, "Madam Secretary, I'd like to request that the first signature belongs not to me, but to the person who inspired this charter." The crowd murmured. Malik's eyes widened. "Me?" Elias smiled from the stage. "Come on up, son." The cameras flashed wildly as the little boy walked up the steps, guided by Ms. Daniels. His hand trembled as he took the pen. Elias knelt beside him, whispering, "Steady hand, buddy. This one's for everyone." Malik looked at the glowing page and carefully wrote his name, Malik Carter. The letters were uneven, a child's handwriting, pure and human. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. The Secretary General leaned toward the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, the first signature of the Nova Charter, by the boy who taught the world that even the smallest voice can move the sky." Outside, the crowd in Geneva roared as the news broke across screens worldwide. In airports, travelers stopped mid-stride to watch the footage of Malik signing the document. Some smiled, some wiped tears away. In one terminal in Atlanta, a flight attendant quietly took off her hat and whispered, "About time." That night, the world looked different. Every airplane in the Sentinel network displayed a new message on its passenger screens. This aircraft operates under the Nova Charter. Dignity above all. The message appeared in 37 languages. People applauded mid-air. Flight crews smiled nervously but proudly. It felt like a reset button for humanity. In New York, protesters who once shouted now held candles. In Tokyo, school children folded paper planes and wrote, "Fly with kindness," on the wings. Hashtags that once carried rage were now filled with stories of change. Later that evening, Elias and Malik stood on the hotel balcony overlooking Lake Geneva. The lights reflected like constellations on the water. Malik leaned against the railing, still holding his bear. "Dad, what's a charter?" Elias smiled softly. "It's a promise, son, but not just words. A promise we all have to keep together." "Even bad people?" Malik asked. "Especially bad people," Elias said, "because they're the ones who need to see what good looks like." Malik thought about that, then nodded. "So, the sky's fixed now?" Elias looked up at the stars. "Not fixed," he said, "but healing." Inside, Ms. Daniels turned on the television. The headline read, "The Nova Charter signed. 137 nations commit to global air ethics reform." She smiled quietly. For once, the news didn't sound like chaos. It sounded like grace. As midnight fell, the Sentinel network recorded its final entry of the day. Across thousands of servers, one simple message appeared on the log. Update complete. Human Dignity Protocol. Active. A final note blinked below it, written manually by Dr. Carter himself. Justice doesn't end when people clap. It ends when they learn. And far above Geneva, a passing aircraft blinked blue twice. A silent salute from the sky that had finally learned to listen. The building used to be an aircraft hangar, cold steel, echoing floors, a place where machines slept. Today, sunlight poured through skylights and washed the walls in a soft, living glow. Children's voices replaced turbine whine. On the facade, 5 words curved in brushed aluminum above the doors. The Museum of Dignity. Inside, the first gallery felt like stepping into a held breath. A single display rose from a circular platform, a glass column with a small silver wristband at its center, lit like a star. Beneath it, a placard read, "Sentinel Child Unit Number 001, activated by Malik Carter on Flight 708. The day the sky learned to listen." Visitors drifted in quietly, like congregants to a chapel. No one took selfies here. They stood with the kind of attention usually reserved for memorials or first words. Daniels watched Malik from a few steps back, letting him take it in alone. He'd worn a pressed shirt and scuffed sneakers because fancy shoes make my feet think too much. He held his teddy bear by one ear, relaxed in a way that still surprised her. She'd spent nights expecting a different story, bad dreams, flinches at sudden noise, questions no adult could bear. But the boy who had called the sky had planted his feet and grown taller. He peered at the bracelet in the case. "It looks smaller," he said. Elias smiled. "Maybe you got bigger." "I didn't," Malik said, considering it. "I just feel less tiny." He pressed his palm to the glass, then pulled it back quickly, like touching a lake in spring. A guide approached, badge clipped to her sweater. Beverly, docent. Hair white and neatly pinned. Smile warm. Eyes that had seen storms and kept sailing anyway. "Welcome," she said. "Would you like to start the story wall?" "The story wall?" Malik asked. Beverly gestured toward a curved corridor where light seemed to ripple like wind. Along the wall, short first-person statements pulsed to life when someone stood before them. "My son cried on his first flight because of his hearing aids. A flight attendant sat with him and taught him to pop his ears. We mailed her flowers. Dignity above all. I used to be afraid to report things. Now every plane shows me how. I'm a flight attendant. The charter didn't make my job harder. It made it honest." People didn't whisper through this gallery. They read aloud. The sound of their voices made the room feel like community, stitching separate lives into something that could hold weight. They turned the corner and reached the exhibit titled Quiet Heroes. At its heart sat a tablet worn smooth at the edges, displayed beside a simple printed photo of an elderly woman with kind eyes. Beverly Matthews. The placard told her story in 3 sentences. The audio recordings, the break-in, the testimony given from a hospital bed. Malik stopped. Beverly? The docent smiled. Some days I'm a volunteer. Every day I'm a grandmother. She winked. I thought I recognized that teddy bear. He hugged her without asking permission. She returned it without hesitation. Did it hurt a lot? He asked, meaning everything and also one thing. Some, Beverly said softly. But I've lived long enough to know pain can be repurposed. We made a lighthouse out of it. A lighthouse? Malik tilted his head. To guide people home to their better selves, she said. That's what museums can be. In the next room, the ceiling arched like the inside of a fuselage. Projected across the curve was a map, a soft web of points pulsing over oceans and continents. A small legend read, Sky Equality Accord, Active Aircraft. Each blue pulse marked a plane now flying with the Carter Protocol embedded in operations. There were so many that the map looked shyly alive, like the planet was breathing in Morse code. A screen nearby played a montage of cockpit cameras, captains explaining new procedures, crews practicing de-escalation, kids pressing call buttons and getting help without hesitation. A caption, plain and unfussy, how a promise becomes practice. Do you want to see the classroom? Asked Beverly. They entered a space full of hands-on things. Flight seats at kid height, intercoms that played kindness scripts, a wooden kiosk where children could design their own airline safety cards. At the back, a long table with paper and markers overlooked a quiet courtyard. Malik sat. He drew the boy again, the one with the paper plane, but this time there were other figures around him, some taller, some smaller, all looking toward the same open sky. He added a lighthouse in the distance because Beverly had given him a new shape for bravery. Ms. Daniels took a seat beside him, scribbling notes for a lesson plan she'd forgotten she wasn't here to write. You know, she said casually, your drawing belongs on the wall here. Malik shook his head. Not yet. It's still learning. Across the table, a girl with a tiny gold hoop in her ear asked, Were you scared? Yes, Malik answered carefully. But scared didn't mean wrong. The girl nodded, like a weight had just been unhooked from a hidden place. I'm going to write that. She did, in purple marker, big letters. Elias lingered by the window. He watched visitors cross the courtyard where a sculpture rose in brushed steel. A child's hand releasing a paper airplane that never fell. A brass strip at the base carried a sentence he had typed alone one night when words felt heavier than sleep. Justice doesn't end when people clap. It ends when they learn. A curator approached him. We finalized the last gallery, she said. Would you like to see? He nodded. They entered the Horizon Room, a space left intentionally unadorned. A long bench faced a floor-to-ceiling window. Beyond it, the runway shimmered in heat haze. Planes lifted and landed in a choreography older than any story. No plaques, no screens. Just the sight of machines trusting air and people trusting each other, moment by moment. Why leave it empty? Elias asked. So visitors have to bring themselves, the curator said. We built a museum about dignity, not display cases. A family entered quietly and sat. No one spoke. The little boy in the group pressed his forehead to the glass and fogged a small circle with his breath, delighted with the miracle of appearing and disappearing clouds. Back in the classroom, Beverly handed Malik a small envelope. Inside, a vinyl sticker of the museum's emblem and a folded card with tidy handwriting. Dear Malik, some of us are old enough to remember when the world pretended not to see. Thank you for making us look. BM. He tucked it into his pocket like a compass. They wandered to the museum shop, not to buy, just to exit, where a display of postcards showed moments from the movement. Candles outside terminals, crews in new training, children boarding with a scrawl beneath each image. Dignity above all. At the register, a sign read, Proceeds, fun travel ombuds for families in need. The practical follow-through made Elias's shoulders loosen. On the steps outside, afternoon had settled into a warm, forgiving gold. People sat on the concrete terraces, eating ice cream and talking softly. The museum had been open 4 hours and somehow already felt like a park. "Can we stay for the film?" Malik asked. "The one in the little theater?" "What's it about?" Elias asked. Beverly answered from behind them, "Air and us." They stayed. The short film was only 7 minutes. It showed nothing more spectacular than helping hands. A passenger making room in an overhead bin. A crew member kneeling to a child's eye level. A teenager giving up a window seat so a nervous flyer could keep the horizon steady. The final shot was a loop of takeoffs filmed from ground level. Wheels lifting, shadows shrinking, light catching metal just so. When the credits ended, no one clapped. They sat in that good silence again, the kind that fills rather than empties. Outside, the day cooled. The wristband in the glass case hummed so faintly a person would have to press an ear to the display to hear it. It wasn't machinery. It was air conditioning. But a few visitors swore they caught a whisper. The sky remembers. On the walk to the car, Malik slipped his hand into his father's. "Do lighthouses ever get tired?" he asked. "Sometimes," Elias said. "But that's why there are many." Malik looked back at the museum, at the people on the steps, the kids with paper planes, the older couple reading plaques aloud, like vows. "Good," he said, "because the ocean is big." They reached the curb. A plane climbed into evening, wing flashing once in the last light. Malik lifted his palm and traced its rise, steady as breath. "Mom used to say the world is a classroom," he murmured. Elias nodded. Then today was a field trip worth taking. They turned toward home, leaving behind a hangar that no longer stored machines, but something rarer, the instructions for how to treat one another when no one thinks they're being watched. The morning began with a small promise. A pale ribbon of light slipped across Malik's bedroom wall, tracing the paper plane mobile that spun in the soft breath of the heater. He lay awake, counting the turns the way he used to count turbulence. On the dresser, his teddy bear sat upright, wearing a tiny pin he'd gotten at the museum gift shop. "Dignity above all." "Big day," Ms. Daniels said from the doorway, tapping twice like a friendly metronome. Malik nodded, sliding into the blue sweater with elbow patches. He checked his wrist. A new band now, plain and quiet. The old one lived at the museum, humming for strangers who needed to hear their better selves. They took the early train. Outside the window, the city shook off its sleep. The bakery shutters lifting, a cyclist gliding through steam, a bus driver laughing with a passenger. It felt like the beginning of something that knew where it was going. "Your speech folded okay?" Ms. Daniels asked. He patted his backpack. "Even the part where I say we instead of I. Especially that part." The auditorium at Alpine Community School used to feel like a place for announcements that slid past students like rain off waxed jackets. Today, it felt like a room waiting to exhale. Parents squeezed into rows. Teachers lined the walls, and the school's new banner hung above the stage. "The Nova Charter lives here." The principal cleared his throat, humility softening the edges of his voice. "Our next speaker is a student you think you know by headlines. You don't. You'll meet him today." He paused. "Welcome, Malik Carter." Applause began cautious, then grew. Malik stepped to the microphone, feet barely touching the line of tape they'd marked for him. He unfolded his paper, then changed his mind and folded it again. "My name is Malik," he said. "I like cartoons, drawing clouds, and the aisle seat because the window makes my tummy feel weird sometimes. Laughter, small, grateful, ordinary. I'm here to say, I didn't fix anything." He looked up. "We did." He told them about the first time he flew after the incident, how the cabin screen showed the charter, and the flight attendant crouched to meet his eyes before asking if he wanted apple juice or water. He told them about the new call button that let kids record any moment that felt wrong, and the way crew members now introduce themselves by name and promise. "I'm here to keep you safe." He didn't mention the slap. Not once. He didn't have to. Didn't. Everyone present had seen the mirror and chosen, in some small way, not to look away. "My dad says charters are promises," Malik said. "But promises are just quiet until people use them." He smiled then, unpracticed, bright. "So, please use them." He stepped back. The applause didn't roar. It warmed. That was better. After, in the hallway, a cluster of children surrounded him. A girl with paint under her nails said, "I don't like loudspeaker drills. They make me feel like I'm underground." "We can ask to change where you sit during them," Ms. Daniels said gently, already jotting a note. A shorter boy with careful posture whispered, "Sometimes I don't know if I should say something. What if I'm wrong?" Malik thought of clouds that only look heavy. "If it feels heavy in your chest," he said, "it's worth saying out loud." In the back, Elias watched quietly. He'd slipped into the room during the speech and stayed near the fire exit like a man who'd learned to stop taking up main aisles. He felt the same steady tremor that had found him on the day of the charter signing, the body remembering it was attached to a heart. On his phone, a message from General Maya Ellis pulsed. "Carter Protocol update accepted by 12 more carriers. Asia Pacific complete." Below it, a news clip. A flight attendant in Johannesburg kneeling to return a dropped headscarf, the passenger weeping into her hands and then laughing because she couldn't help it. He typed back, "Good work, keep it boring." She replied with a salute emoji and, improbably, a lighthouse. By afternoon, the city had warmed into mid-season light, the kind that waits politely at the corners of buildings before rounding them. Elias and Malik walked to the park that ran along the river, Ms. Daniels trailing a few steps behind, letting them have the kind of silence families earn. They stopped on a footbridge where the water made a music older than grief. Across the bank, a billboard grinned down. "Everyone belongs in the sky." The airline name beside it was new, the leadership newly humbled. The ad didn't crow. It promised. "They asked me to consult," Elias said. "Audit their training, build a different kind of culture." "Are you going to?" Malik asked. "Yes," he said, "because repair is a kind of science too." A gull sketched a white comma over the water and set down in the slow current. Malik leaned his elbows on the rail. "Do you miss building the system?" Elias considered the servers humming in their cool rooms, the tablets awake with updates, the ethics dashboards that made executives sweat. He considered the museum's quiet and the school's banner and the tremble that had followed him into sleep for months. "I don't miss building it," he said. "I like watching it be used." They crossed to the other side of the park where a pop-up cinema had been erected for community night. A handwritten chalkboard listed short films selected by students. Kindness scripts, Seat 12C, Hands That Helped, and the Horizon Room. Footage from the museum window, stitched to music that didn't insist. People brought blankets. Someone handed around mandarins. The projector carved a rectangle of light onto a sheet pulled tight by clothespins. When the films began, no one hushed anyone else. Quiet happened on its own. In Seat 12C, an older man with a navy pin on his lapel struggled with the overhead bin. A teenager stood up, took the weight, and smiled like he'd been waiting all day for a chance to do that. The audience sighed the way audiences do when the plot remembers to be human. Between films, the moderator, one of Ms. Daniels's fellow teachers, took the mic. "Community is a verb," she said. "Thank you for conjugating it." Elias laughed under his breath. "Teachers," he murmured, fond. At dusk, the sky became the color of a clean slate. Someone released paper planes, not to rise, but to drift into small hands that reached up from every blanket on the lawn. On Malik's plane, Ms. Daniels had written in tidy script, "We keep each other safe." He tucked it behind his ear. When the final program faded, The screen stayed white, a long beat, as if the air needed to cool. Then, without announcement, a live feed blinked on. Airport gates around the world. Seoul, Nairobi, Lima, Auckland, each showing the same boarding moment. Crew at the entryway, eyes level, welcoming every single passenger as if reading their names from a story they were about to write together. At gate A3, a child hesitated. The flight attendant met her halfway, palms open. The girl stepped forward. The gate agent smiled and scanned the ticket. The camera panned to the doorway where the cabin light looked for a blink, like sunrise. The feed cut. The projector went dark. The crowd didn't clap. They breathed. On the walk home, Malik held his father's hand without thinking. "Do you think people will forget?" he asked. "Some will," Elias said, honestly. "That's why we built reminders into the world. Charters, wristbands, museums, stories." "Stories," Malik repeated, like a new tooth he was learning to trust. They reached their building. On the stoop, someone had left a stack of postcards from the museum shop with a marker tied to it. A cardboard sign read, "Write a promise. Take one home." Ms. Daniels wrote first, "I will be the adult who kneels to eye level." Elias, "I will design for dignity before convenience." Malik, tongue peeking from the corner of his mouth, "I will say it out loud when my chest feels heavy." They each took a different card from the pile. Elias slipped his into his wallet next to his ID. Sometimes people needed two kinds of identification, who they were and who they intended to be. Inside, the apartment smelled like oranges and the faint paper dust of a lived-in desk. Through the window, a plane crossed the rectangle of sky, wing light pulsing a steady heartbeat. "Dad?" Malik said, already half asleep on the couch. "Yeah, buddy? Do you think the sky gets lonely?" Elias looked at the city holding its own weight for once and shook his head. "Not tonight." He switched off the lamp. In the quiet, the world felt held by something you couldn't point to but could feel, the way you feel a hand before it reaches yours, the way you feel a plane lift before the wheels leave the ground. Across the dark, the paper plane mobile turned once, then settled, as if a promise had landed where it was supposed to, and the sky, which had learned to listen, kept listening.